Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer of Julian Biba's novel, Safe Ground. Today, we're diving straight into the terrifying, everyday reality of a 14-year-old boy named Daniel living under a totalitarian regime in communist Albania. We're going to really unpack exactly why Daniel feared this regime so profoundly, looking at it from a massive national scale all the way down to a deeply personal level. Let's kick things off with this incredibly powerful quote from the source material. Human rights are not a privilege conferred by government. They are every human being's entitlement by virtue of his humanity. It's a quote by Mother Teresa, and it sets up this really sharp contrast between natural human freedom and the dystopian nightmare we're about to explore. It's a stark reminder of a fundamental truth that the regime in our story just completely, totally denied its citizens. I mean, just think about this contrast for a second. While your typical 14-year-old is, developing their independence, maybe setting some life goals, figuring out who they are, Daniel's reality was literally worlds apart. His adolescence wasn't his own. It was completely hijacked by the state. His youth was basically defined by survival and sheer terror. We're talking nighttime kidnappings, systemic torture, and constantly dodging the secret police. So let's get into Section 1, Behind the Iron Curtain, a macro-level fear. To really wrap our heads around Daniel's fear, we first need to look at the macro-level oppression of the state. Now, I know the Iron Curtain might sound like just some dusty historical term today, right? But for Daniel and his fellow citizens, it was literally an inescapable prison. It was an environment of absolute hopelessness, total loss, and raw terror. It's that feeling where your fate is just entirely out of your own hands. Moving on to Section 2. Skanderbeg Military School and Institutional Control. Zooming in from the national level to the institutional level, Daniel's daily nightmare unfolding inside a very specific facility. And guys, this was not your normal high school where you just go to math class and hang out with your friends. The Skanderbeg Military School was a notorious facility designed to forge new cogs for the regime's machine. They used incredibly harsh conditions and government-endorsed brainwashing just to break the individual and mold these absolute, unquestioning loyalists. Which brings us to Section 3, the Wrath of Commander Vlad. You see, the regime needed enforcers to actually carry out this brainwashing, basically empowering sadistic individuals to just crush the human spirit. And Commander Vlad, he was the immediate, daily face of Daniel's fear. Just look at the escalating absurdities Vlad used to feed his god complex. He literally ordered Daniel to shine shoes while standing in the pouring rain. He forced him to mop floors until they had a mirror-like shine, and even made him haul heavy steel buckets to wet down a freezing flag plaza before dawn in the bitter winter cold. It's just wild. Despite all that, Daniel had this innate, burning desire to defy the abuse. He questioned the regime's teachings in his own mind, and eventually, he pushed back. There's this intense moment in the text where he yells, "Do not touch me," feeling like lava is flowing through his veins. But, as you can probably guess, in an environment like this, pushing back against a commanding officer like Vlad is basically just painting a massive target on your own back. And that leads to a crucial question. What happens when your family defies the state? Because Daniel wasn't just fighting one cruel commander. He was battling an entire system that criminalized any form of disobedience. And that terrifying threat didn't just stop with him. It extended right to his loved ones. Let's look at Section 4, Secrets, Surveillance, and Police. This highlights the deep systemic fear enforced by the secret police, who are led by a notoriously feared figure named Marks. The paranoia was absolutely constant, mostly because of what the state actually considered to be a crime. I mean, everyday acts that we take completely for granted were viewed as highly punishable, literally treasonous offenses. Just casually reading philosophical poetry by Daniel's cousin Peter, or his father openly listening to a foreign radio station, could easily land you in a cell. Having a family member who practices religion as a priest, like Daniel's cousin, made you an enemy of the state. Guilt by association was basically the law of the land here. Section 5. The ultimate personal cost. Let's see how all this systemic dread builds to the absolute climax of Daniel's fear, the sudden and terrifying loss of his family. This is where the nightmare becomes a horrific reality. Despite being a highly decorated and devoted military officer himself, Daniel's father is ruthlessly dragged away. Marks and his armed guards literally pull him down the apartment stairwell to face state scrutiny, while Daniel's mother pleads helplessly. It just goes to show you that absolutely no one is safe, no matter how loyal they might appear on paper. The result of this state violence? Both of Daniel's parents are gone. The regime essentially orphaned a 14-year-old boy overnight, stripping away his very last layer of protection. This left Daniel completely vulnerable and entirely at the absolute mercy of Commander Vlad's destructive path. Moving to Section 6, reaching the breaking point. With his family out of the picture, Daniel faces a horrifying final interrogation that pushes him right to the absolute brink. In a cramped, sweltering office, Vlad decides it's time to end Daniel's defiance once and for all. He demands that Daniel confess to harboring military secrets, and to physically silence him, Vlad literally pulls a tie from his closet and ties it around Daniel's face to cover his mouth like a makeshift gag. It's just a suffocating, terrifying display of sheer dominance. And it gets worse. Vlad then drags Daniel to the window, dangling a 14-year-old out of a window pane by his collar and his pants. This scene paints such a vivid, terrifying picture of a state with zero accountability and absolute power over life and death. Vlad can do whatever he wants, and there's literally no one Daniel can call for help. But remarkably, faced with certain death, Daniel doesn't break under the physical torture. His will to survive just kicks into overdrive. He formulates this incredibly desperate escape plan, taking the monumental risk of actually impersonating a military officer, just to avoid Vlad's immediate wrath. And from there, he realizes he has to plot a highly dangerous escape, making his way entirely past the Iron Curtain if he wants to survive. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought about the indestructible nature of the human spirit. Having seen the anatomy of fear that Daniel lived through, the institutional brainwashing, the sadistic commanders, the secret police, and the heartbreaking loss of his family, ask yourself, what would you risk for the simple opportunity to grow up free? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I highly encourage you to take a moment to reflect on what a privilege it is to live safely outside the Iron Curtain.